Are we on?
I think so.
Can we check?
I'll check. No, but I'm not sure if it
could be us.
Could be us.
I think we're on. Okay.
Yay!
Do you wanna start?
Sure.
Cool.
Let's go.
Okay. So my name's Gigi. This is Emma, and we're debaters from Leiden. We've been speaking together for a while, so we've been to Worlds, and we'll be going to Euros as well. And what we'll be doing today is we're going to do a workshop about teamwork and how to prepare yourselves to be a good and I guess a stable team for things like Euros, because sometimes it could be tough to speak with the same person under like these circumstances and stress. And so we're going to try and talk you through some of that, and we're going to go all the way from what you can do now and agreements you can discuss before the competition to also things like how do you talk about feedback, what do you do if you have a conflict, what do you do when you're stressed, and if at any point you have any questions, you can go through the live chat thing, which we're also checking. Yeah, okay, I think that we can just start with the first thing, which is right now. What do you do right now? You have like a month before Euros, and there's lots of things that you can talk about with your partner. And I think one note is these are not things we like checked on a list. These are just things we've encountered as a team in the past months, and things we thought were useful to do. And I think it's important to note that everyone has their own style when it comes to what decision you want to make about those subparts, but it's just things to consider. So one of the first things is you're now a month from Euros, so now it's pretty easy to kind of maybe still feel kind of distant from the stress and the excitement. So now is basically the time to talk about expectations and to talk through what you think goals could be for Euros and Worlds. And I think those are both things in terms of like, what do you think in terms of results? Do you actually think you want to break? Is that a goal you want to set for yourself? And when you think is when you can reach, or are those different things? And I think we have both of them. We both talk about what we think and we think we can do in terms of break result, but also very personal things. So one of ours is that we usually want to give at least one speech that we're very, very proud of. So not just a regular, oh, that was fine. But if there's one speech in the 9 in-rounds that we're really proud of, then we already feel like Worlds and Euros are a success.
Yeah, and I think it's good to be honest about it, because it's really easy to say, I don't care at all. I just want to go and it's going to be fun. And that's obviously true, partly. But also partly you probably have some goals of things you want to reach. I know we talked about speaks maybe that we wanted to get and stuff like that. So I think it's important to be honest. But it shouldn't become like this scary, if I don't reach this, I would have rather not spoken with you things. So yeah. And we were going to do a demo, but I feel like people should be able to do this.
I feel like it's good, right? So I think one of the next things is you're going to get frustrated, regardless of how close of friends you are, how long you've been speaking together. There's going to be times during your prep or during the competition where you're going to be frustrated, and you want maybe with each other, and you want to bitch about that. So we decided to want to do that mainly to each other, and I think that works because usually when we bitch about each other, it's more of a I don't know, a technical thing of this thing went wrong and I'm frustrated. But I've been in other teams where we decided that we were going to not bitch or like not vent to each other about each other, but to other people. But I think the most important thing there was that we both basically disclosed who we were going to vent to each other. So I'd say, Emma, I'm going to be talking to this other person about you, and then she'd know, so it wouldn't be her constantly thinking that we talk to everyone.
Yeah, and I also think that just because often you are frustrated after a debate for a couple of minutes and you want to vent to someone, but then you tell other people and other people have their own ideas and feelings about your venting or frustration. So I think that if you want to kind of not get other people to have ideas about your team, that's really important. And also I think that it's important to discuss about how honest you are towards each other, because I've been in teams where team partners were super, super honest, and I would sit down, they would be like, that was not a very good speech. And I've been in teams where no matter what I did, they would be like, woo! And I think we're somewhere in between, but I think that that's something that you need to explicitly discuss, because honesty is optional, but you need to at least make an agreement about whether you want to be honest or not.
Yeah. And I think the same kind of thing applies to nerves. So I always used to think I wasn't nervous at all during our rounds. I just believe that. And then like 2 weeks ago, Emma told me that, well, that's weird because I thought everyone knew that you get very, very nervous during out rounds. And she already dealt with it in a way. She already has ways to deal with me when I'm nervous, and I have things I do for Emma when she's nervous, but we talk them through. So I guess it's really important for some people just recognize it themselves when they're really nervous, but some don't. I'm one of those people that doesn't. So I had to talk to Emma to understand, for her to help me to understand when I'm nervous and what we want to do. But you might be someone that knows what they do when they're nervous and how they feel, and someone that's more able to like recognize that. And it's important to tell your partner what that is, what that looks like, for them not to do all of the things that make you more nervous when you are nervous.
Like we had very specific conversations where I was like, if I'm nervous, I don't want to talk about the fact that I'm nervous because I feel like that just makes it worse for me. But that's different for everybody. So I think that I don't know, all teams deal with that differently, and you should talk about it. We also wanted to talk about taking care of yourself and your team partners. So often you have these, you're stressed, you're nervous, you have to be together for a very long time, but tournaments also have these other things than debating going on, like socials, like in between rounds, there's waiting periods that are hopefully for Euros and Worlds not very long, but can be very long. And at least it means that you need to come up with some sort of thing that you want to do between. So for socials, I think it's important to kind of decide or talk about whether you want to go, whether you think it's okay for the other one to drink a lot. I don't think we have very explicit agreements about this, but like I think that for our team, I think it's fine to say, I don't think I should have an opinion about what Gigi does because I feel like she's responsible. But I think for other teams, they care about what they do at social. So I think you need to discuss that. Also, whether you go together, we live in a house together. We do lots of things together, but that doesn't work for all teams. And the same goes for in between rounds. Like, do you go outside and just like hang out together, or do you don't hang out, or you don't want to hang out together, which is all fine. But I think that's something you need to talk about, because a lot of the teams feel kind of like you're obliged to talk to your team partner just because they're your team partner, but maybe you're great in debates and you have other friends besides your team partner, which is probably a good idea in both scenarios. So I think that you also kind of need to discuss what you do in between rounds. And we also think that it's important to talk about how much responsibility you have for each other. So I usually do tell Gigi multiple times during a tournament that I feel like she should eat more. And I think
I take my meds because I forget to take my meds.
Stuff like that. But also like we talk about that because I can't decide that it's my responsibility for her to eat. So I feel like she kind of has to accept the fact that I feel like I have the right to say these things. And I think those are agreements you need to make early on, because if you want to make changes in it, and if you were never used to thinking about whether your team partner ate, but it does kind of work in your team partnership that maybe you should take a little bit more responsibility there, then I think that that's something you need to prep in, or like practice in prep competitions and stuff like that. So I think it's important to talk about that.
And I guess like all of these agreements eventually revolve around trying to be prepared for conflict, because I mean, it might happen that you disagree about something that's happening, and that's fine, and then you have to solve it. But it's the more of these things you can talk through before the competition, the better prepared you are when they happen. So like, I don't know, there are things that some people are energized by, and some people it just makes them tired. So like, I don't know, there might be friends that I have that Emma thinks are really, I don't know, boring, and we might have
friends of Gigi. Hi.
We might have the reverse as well. And the thing is, like, if I don't tell her that, she might think that she's taking me along for something fun and energizing. Well, it might be tiring for me, or the other way around. And I guess the same applies, especially if first people, I don't know, if you're speaking with someone whose significant other is also at a competition, and they want to hang out with them, that might do something to how you feel, or like if a debate goes a certain way and you've talked that through together in a constructive way, like we'll be discussing later, if whether you want to share that with others. So we usually go with big delegations and they always ask how everything goes, but maybe if I really fuck up a speech, I won't want Emma to tell everyone, and that's something you need to discuss beforehand. So what do you keep inside your team, and what goes out?
Also, like, so sometimes you disagree in prep about something, and I know teams that will go out after prep and just kind of check with other teams what they thought about their disagreement, like very debate, kind of the content of the debate, just be like, oh, we made this call for extension, what do other people think? I think that's a way to go with it if you like that. I think for us, we kind of leave the debate in the debate and just don't talk about it that much. But those are things you need to discuss, because also what you need to discuss what happens when Gigi really likes doing one thing and I really like doing another thing, and how you're gonna meet somewhere in between to make everyone feel the most comfortable.
Yeah, and I guess we have a very specific, like, I think, agreement that that says that we never appoint winners and losers. It's because I think we really believe that anything we do as a team is an effort, a combined effort. We never do. I mean, if I run an extension, that's always one that we've probably thought of together and decided we thought was best together. So if that means that the extension is really shitty and Emma has a really hard job in whip, that still means we did it together. Even though she couldn't save it in her whip, that's still something we do together. Yeah. So we never pick winners and losers, both during a debate or to other people. And I think other people will try and make you do that, because I think people tend to want to make comparisons a lot, especially within teams. So we've been asked a lot about what we do speaking together by other people. And I usually, and I know that Emma does as well, we always answer, I know you do that, you can do whatever you want. We always answer like, well, we decided together.
Yeah.
And also, if Emma decides something without me, I always trust her and I'll always defend her, even though sometimes I will disagree with what she's done. We'll talk about it together, but never talk to other people before we have with each other. I see a question.
Ooh, disagreements during prep. We'll talk about that, right?
Yeah, we're gonna
we'll talk about this disagreements during prep. Cool. Questions. Yay. We also had one last thing, which I think you need to discuss before tournament start, which is conflict, which might be partly during prep, but I think broader, just if you feel your team partner isn't focused enough, or if you have frustrations which build up because you spend a lot of time together and that happens, I think you need to kind of set the boundaries of the conflict. So I feel like Gigi and I are very good friends, which means that sometimes if I say something or she says something, we all know that it's friendly and we know each other really well. I can imagine if you're speaking with a team partner you don't know that well, you need to set those boundaries a little more strict, or talk about that a little bit more.
And I think specifically when it's disagreements about content and like the question says in prep, I think one of the big things is sometimes I'll have like an idea that I think is amazing, and Emma will just tell me either during prep or during the debate that's not a good idea. And I think when you start speaking together at first, or at least what we had was we talk it through and we'd consider all of the reasons that she'd have to not like the argument, and I'd give all of my reasons, and then sometimes we'd agree, blah, blah. What I've started doing now is I just trust Emma to know more of what the debate is going to, what the debate's going to look like and how it's going to play out, because that's what she's supposed to be doing in whip. That's what she is really good at. So if she tells me, I don't think this is a good argument and we don't have time to talk it through, I just reject my pride and accept that she is making a better choice than I, and I trust her. And she does the same. I know that she only says that an idea is a bad idea if she is very certain of it not being good enough, and if she's not able to fix it. So I guess, and I mean, at this, when we started doing this, at first we'd like name this, we'd label this, like, you need to trust me in this, but I guess it really worked.
Yeah.
I think those calls never end up going wrong.
It's 15 minutes, so I think that you also need to agree in a certain moment that sometimes you make a call and someone makes a judgment call, and that's the wrong judgment call, which means that might be really frustrating because you disagreed with it and you are losing the debate because the other one made that decision. But those are all things that you have to agree with. You have to agree with the fact that someone else makes those judgments calls sometimes, and that sometimes they go wrongly, but that doesn't mean that person no longer deserves the trust or whatever to make those calls. So I think it's also kind of about setting boundaries about sometimes you're really bad in your speech or in the debate, and that doesn't mean you're a bad debater. It means that this happens once and hopefully we'll go better next time.
So I guess that's what we wanted to talk about when it comes to agreements that you can make right now. So the next thing we kind of wanted to deal with was training and improvements, and not necessarily what we think you should be improving on or training on, but how you set the boundaries for training and how you make that run smoothly, basically. So I think one of the things here is I don't think there's one way to train or improve. It's very specific to your team, and it's not even specific to you as a debater yourself, but very specific to you and a combo and how you work. So when we first started out, we really felt like in the base that we were in, we were scrambling to find examples, and we felt like we went into debates when motions were about things we didn't know a lot about, going in there without any kind of idea of what the debate would play out like. So we really felt like we missed knowledge. So an example of training and improvement and what we talked about then was we wanted to improve that. So we decided that was a goal that we could make work. And then the second step was we decided that we needed to improve that together, because largely it's only going to be useful, whether it's knowledge or more of a strategic insight or whatever, it's only going to be useful if you both can work with the thing you gain. So in this specific example, we watched documentaries for a few months before Worlds, as many as we could, like 15-minute documentaries. And then after a while, we felt less and less of the knowledge gaps happening in debates, and we stopped doing that because we felt we'd done as much as could be useful for us in that. And then we set a new goal and tried to work towards that. And also it's kind of hard to make yourself improve on such a long time span, and usually like prepping for Worlds and Euros can take forever and can be very long. So I know we did that. We set rewards for ourselves if we do it. So after I don't know, if we watched 30 documentaries, 50-minute documentaries, then we were going to go for cocktails. And I know of teams that had agreements to give speeches individually by themselves once every day. And if they do that, then what? A reward, something random. But that made it more of a fun thing, and it makes sometimes the training thing, if you do that now and the only end goal is Euros, it can seem kind of far away, and it's hard to keep yourself motivated throughout the whole thing. So the short-term thing of a reward, but also keeping each other to your agreement, me asking when we were going to watch a documentary, or Emma walking me through one because I couldn't have done it myself because I know fuck all about the global financial crisis. That makes it a doable thing, but also a rewarding thing on the shorter term, I guess.
Yeah, and I think it's important to kind of make it fun, because that's what stops you from prepping, right? Because you hopefully do debating because you like it. But sometimes it's just not very interesting to read an article about economics. Sorry to all the people who really care about economics. I bet you feel the same about the things we find interesting. And I think that then if you do it together, it becomes easier. But not all prep needs to be done together, right? So I think that the main thing is that you should set up something together. So whether that is you should do your speech by yourself, but we have some form of motivating you, or not checking you, but kind of making you feel like it is useful to do these things. And I think that's something you need to do together, but not all prep needs to do together. It needs to be done together, right? If Gigi watches a documentary and uses that knowledge in the speech, I'll repeat it in WIP. So I think that's also useful. Thirdly, what we think you should do, which is one of the most important things, is get excited for Euros or Worlds. It takes a long time. It's a long period of debates, but also there's a long prep. Everyone will talk about it for a long time. And I think people should get excited because it's supposed to be fun.
And also, you're just better when you're excited. And it's really hard to keep yourself excited for the whole thing. But when you've already talked through what your favorite part of Euros is going to be. We have a list of music, like songs that get us psyched. Oh, we also, for this Euros, thought of a list of people that we thought were really cool, that were either speaking or judging, that we're really excited to see. And those are things that you do now, so you get really excited for it now, but it also is something that you can bring up when you see that your team partner's kind of through their energy for the day, or and something to look forward to that's also going to probably help you through more of the prep.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to do non-debater things, because the debates are part of Euros, of course, but you're going to spend so much time together, you probably want to get to know your team partner at least a little bit. And want to make sure that you have some things to talk about in the, I don't know, the 10 minutes you wait for the judges to deliberate. What we also do, I feel, which is fun, is we set bets. So the bet we've done for the last 5 tournaments we went to was the person who would outspeak the other person had to buy that person sushi, food.
I'm getting a lot of sushi.
I'm buying a lot of sushi.
But I guess the thing is that also kind of like it makes the competitive part between you, the two of you, less of a painful thing. Like, I honestly consider outspeaking your team partner something that is a direct result of the way in which you speak and prep. So I think it's I've spoken with people who I would outspeak. I'm now speaking with Emma, who generally outspeaks me, and those are things that I'm very proud of, because it just means that we're doing really well as a team, and that she's also getting her moment in the spotlight, and she's doing well deservedly. But because we do the bets thing, it just becomes something you can discuss, and something that isn't painful. And I mean, for us, I don't think it started painfully, but it is something that you couldn't do if.
But I think the same goes for, at a certain time we had like I had never spoken above a certain speak, and that was our goal. Right. And then we would laugh about it during the tournament. Gigi would be like, "This is not the speech where you're gonna get that speak." And I think that it's also about like just setting some fun goals. And I think the way we make them more fun, instead of "I need to get this, otherwise I'm gonna be really disappointed," is to set some fun bets. I also think you should think of doing fun things together. So we always really like Jesper and Rita, who dress together, like dress similarly, like they're like a real team. I
don't think we can make that work, because everything that looks nice on Emma looks stupid on me.
But I think that just finding a way in which your team works really well, and a way in which you can think about the competition, and I don't know, they match outfits. We find coffee places where we could possibly go to, and I think
actually we do that. We only noticed that we do that today, but like we always, every morning at Worlds this year, but also usually at competitions that we go to, in the morning we won't go do something with anyone else, but the two of us will just go for coffee and, I don't know, talk about whether we're nervous or the things that we were excited for that we talked about months ago, and it's just a thing that we do, just the two of us, and also something to look forward to. And I guess we don't need a lot of the getting to know each other well, because we're close friends and we live together and stuff, but I guess because we because we spend a lot of time together, we also always have something to talk about, and that's really something you can just grow. I think anyone can become really interesting if you just talk about things, talk about different things with them for an amount of time before you spend such an intense amount of time with each other. So really invest in that, because that's going to make Euros way more fun, but also way easier, where you feel like the person in your team is not just the person that fucked up the extension, but is also someone that you have the same music taste as, and that you can laugh with, and that you went for coffee with this morning.
Yeah. So I think that brings us to the second part of this talk, which is, what do you do during tournaments? So we already briefly talked about getting coffee, but I think just in general, it's quite important to find some form of habits or rituals that you have that feel good during the tournament. And I think that's partly because if you do things similarly, that will kind of like make you less nervous. So just we walked for coffee in basically every tournament we've ever been to, which means that if you're now at Euros, it doesn't feel like an exception. It feels like another debating tournament, which it is. But I mean, I think that really works. And also I think that it kind of, I think that some people take walks, and there are these little things that you do together or alone, which work really well. And you need to respect those habits and rituals.
Yeah,
don't touch our coffee.
Don't touch our coffee. And also, I think sometimes someone else will ask you to do something, like someone from a different team or someone from your delegation, and we're like really strict about it. That I know sometimes Emma has a slightly harder time saying no. If someone asks for help for something, someone will be like, "Oh, I lost my bag for the 7th time today, and do you have to skip your coffee with Gigi and go with me find my shit?" And she'll be like, "Okay, sure." So I'll have to tell her and tell the other person that that's not going to happen. So it's something you have to protect together, because some people are more like have a harder time saying no and thinking of themselves than others. So that's something you have to do together.
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay, so I think slightly more contenty during the competition. There is something that you have to think about, and that's whether you're going to ask feedback or not. So I think generally, like, ask for feedback. I judge a lot. I always find it really annoying when people don't ask for feedback, because I always ask for feedback. But to be really honest, I don't think there are things that you'll hear at Euros that are very significantly different from the things that you've been doing for the whole prep thing that you will be able to adapt towards at Euros when you get the feedback then. So
like, I think it's going to be really difficult to hear something in round 4 and then be able to implement it in round 5.
If you've been doing it differently for months. So, I mean, and this is something you can discuss, but we will be asking feedback at Euros, but we'll be asking watch it. We'll be asking it specifically. So it's not like, is there anything
you would have done differently?
Anything constructively that you would change about our team, because that might give us an answer that's overwhelming. And we have talked this through and know that we're a team that at Euros we need more of a. We need to know if we're on the track that we know that we can do well on. So we'd be asking more things that we've already talked about. So I don't know if I don't do an intro, and we've talked about that I want to do intros, I can ask if that was a thing that changed the way in which my speech fell or how it went. So I guess we'd specifically ask for things that we can like use the answer for, but not necessarily broader things, because those can like overwhelm you and be kind of derailing. And it's also something to discuss that you won't want feedback. You might not want feedback after every round, or the both of you might not necessarily want it. So I know that if I do a really bad round, I sometimes feel awkward about asking feedback immediately. So I want to go back a little later when I've kind of thought about it myself.
But also sometimes you feel like you did really well. We have that sometimes. We feel like we did really well. And you just see judges don't agree, and judges feel very differently. And sometimes it's really good to ask for feedback, because they will give you a different perspective, and I'll explain why they didn't see you as doing really well. But sometimes we go up there and they say things that just make you kind of insecure or make you feel bad about the round, whilst you felt good about it before. So I think it's also about thinking about that. Now, I think that it's important to kind of talk about maybe giving how you give feedback to your team partner.
Wait, but before one more thing on like feedback for judges. That's you, not me. I think the thing is, it's fine if you want different things from feedback at Euros, but the problem is often if you go to judges and ask them for feedback, they'll give you both feedback. So
I did this. I wanted feedback. I asked for feedback, and the judge just talked to Gigi for 6 minutes.
I felt really shitty about my speech, and I got like 12 minutes of hell on my speech. I was like, I know, it was horrible, and Emma just wanted to know one specific thing. Anyway, so decide. I mean, if you feel really bad about your speech, or you have another reason not to want feedback immediately, tell your partner so they won't ask. And then you wanted to say something about...
Yeah, so giving feedback to each other, because I was just thinking about this, because sometimes we give feedback to each other, not very often, we're big fans of each other. But if we give feedback to each other, I think it's important to do two things. So basically be constructive, and I know everyone says this, but very few people actually are, because I think that I usually got the feedback like you should speak in a different way, and I would be like, how though? And it gets really frustrating, and it gets really confusing. So I think that even before you give the feedback, you need to think of ways that your team partner can actually do this. And I think secondly, what we already talked about, just with speaks, it's collaborative, right? So if I say, Gigi, I don't think you have enough mechanisms in your extension speech, that's probably something we should change in prep, and that's something I also contribute to. So I think that it's good to, if you give feedback to each other, to realize the fact that usually it's feedback to your entire team. It's just, it might show up in the speech of your partner, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the fault is with your partner, right? So I think that that's something that you also need to be very careful with. Because I think it's just not very useful if you no longer feel like your team partner is supportive, or if you just feel really frustrated because your team partner keeps giving you these tips and feedbacks that feel really useless and difficult to you.
Yeah, I think the next thing is backtabbing. So like calculating the amount of points that you're on day
when there's
3.
Closed rounds, what did
3.
you do?
So Emma has a real hand of it. So it doesn't bother me at all, and I told Emma that it doesn't bother me at all. So, and I kind of like it. I like the speculation. I don't even, to me, it's more of a distraction than anything else, but it makes some people really nervous. So that's something you need to discuss whether you do it or not. Emma psychs herself out with backtabbing. So you thought it worked.
I
remember Worlds. We didn't know what teams were in our room. We misheard one, and she had found the list of the teams.
I don't like backtabbing.
Like, oh my God, they're on this, which means we're not gonna, and it's all hopeless. And then it turns out it was a different team, and it was all fine.
But so I think the thing is, for me, backtabbing usually means that I feel like we started on 10 points. We didn't hear a judging call, so now we're still on 10 points. And if that goes on for 3 rounds, he'll just be like, look, we started on 10 points. We're still on 10 points. This is really horrible. I wish we weren't on 10 points. And Gigi would be like, maybe we won something. No, and I'll be like, nah. So I think for us, it's best to not talk about it.
But it's something you need to decide.
Yeah, because other teams feel really comfortable if they can kind of guess how much points they still want or need. But
this is also something you need to discuss for, like, so in our case, we don't necessarily backtab because Emma doesn't like it. So we don't. I might do it secretly. But then we also talked about me not talking to other debaters about our backtabbing because then it will eventually still come back to Emma, or she'll know that I'm discussing it, and it just makes you paranoid. So
an entire project is keeping Emma out of backtabbing.
So like, no, but like, it does mean you have to do the full extent of the agreement, not just whether you're within your team gonna backtab or not.
Yeah.
And then there's also the disappointment.
Yeah, so I think there's a question about that. How do you deal with disappointment?
So honestly, I think we talked about this today and how we do that. And a big part of this is setting goals. So to be maybe harsh, but hopefully not unexpectedly harsh, only 2 teams are going to win Euros this year.
This is factually true, though, so it's not harsh.
All of the other teams are just going to not win. So it's unreasonable to set. I mean, if you are watching and you think that you're definitely 100% sure that you're one of those 2 teams that's going to win Euros, then by all means, talk about your partner about how your goal is to win Euros, and you're not going to be disappointed if you're that sure. But I think no one's sure at this point.
No one should be that.
No one should be that sure, which means that there's going to be a lot of points at which you might be disappointed. You break, you don't break. You go into day 3 on an amount of points that means that you can't break anymore. You might go out of the out round immediately. That's what Emma and I always do. And those are all things that could be really tough because those might either be still be reaching the goal that you set together, because we'll still have both have given a speech that we're really proud of, but it's still kind of hard to deal with, and or it could even mean that you didn't reach the goal that you thought was attainable before the competition.
Yeah, so I think that the way to do with this is to set attainable goals. Like if we're going to Euros, we're obviously not going to say, I want to win. Well, maybe you want to win, but that's probably like everyone wants to win, but I guess that's not your goal or expectation. So I think that just be reasonable. 2, I think there also need to be goals that are separate from the outcome of the debate. So yes. I think that's what we have. We just want to give one speech that we're really happy with. Well, we could lose all debates, like 0 points after 9 rounds. Like no debate was won, but I'll probably give a speech that I'm happy with, I'm assuming. So I think that it's also about setting those goals. And I think it's also about thinking about your team partner. So basically, if we're really disappointed or we did really bad in the debate, I think that what we usually do is the first thing you do is just like, I'm really happy we spoke together, and you just kind of like get at least, I don't know, pretend you're kind of happy with your team partner at that moment.
I guess no, but that's also something you discuss. Like,
yeah, okay, fair.
So I think we're both usually pretty negative about our speeches. So we'll sit down after a speech and both be like, well, that was shitty. And a big part of the time, I'll also watch your speech and be like, no, that was really good though. So and I know that but we've talked about how we both really need like the positive reinforcement right after a debate, because regardless of how we've actually done, we'll usually feel like it wasn't that good. So we always after a speech will say that it's really good, that was really good, and you should be happy. And sometimes when I don't give a speech that is actually good enough or like is below what we think we can do, Emma will still say good job, and then say, I don't know, maybe we can talk about what how to prevent that feeling from happening for next round, because it's usually also a huge influence on how you actually do, whether you feel like you're doing well. So we talk about where those disappointments come from, and then try to take those out instead of, I mean, you can't change the outcome of the debate. You can't change how you feel about the way in which it plays out and the way in which your speech goes.
I think in general, we as a team just kind of have a very big focus on having fun, which means that it's a little easier to, if you don't break or don't do well or get kicked out of an out round immediately, to kind of just be like, oh, we'll do something else that is fun now. I think that makes it easier. I think another good tip is to talk to friends who are not debaters, because I feel like that puts everything into perspective. And yeah, I think that that's something you need to discuss as much as possible with your team partner. And I think sometimes you just kind of have to accept that it sucks.
And I think,
but that doesn't say anything about your team partner or about the team that you are, right? So even if I feel bad about a speech I gave, that doesn't mean I'm not having fun with Gigi. So I think that if you kind of learn how to separate those two things, it won't affect your team partnership.
And we are both very, very explicit about what we think would be good when we're disappointed. So like, I've been, and I've had this more often, like I've spoken with people who after we'd go out and an outrun would be like, I don't want to watch the next one. So I'm just going to do something else. Emma and I usually do watch, and that I think we have fun when we watch an outrun that we're not in. That's fine. We don't get really frustrated or something.
Much experience with
and
that,
so much experience. And or like when we're disappointed, I'll say like, I think I want to go to the social and just talk to people I don't know yet, or I will say, I don't know, I want to go for dinner somewhere else, and we'll do that kind of stuff. But we're very, I mean, I can't tell Emma now what I want for every single point of disappointment that we might ever face in our life. So I try to say it in the moment. I'm like, okay, I kind of feel, ooh, let's think about why I'm disappointed. What would help? Distraction, or and then I'll tell her. We'll talk it through.
Yeah. I feel like that
kind of sums up disappointment, right?
Yeah, disappointment.
We seem like total disappointment experts, don't we?
Maybe we are.
Okay, taking care of me part, or the interview as well.
I think
we dealt with that.
Yeah, I think we dealt with that, but I think that just in general, pay attention to your team partner, because I feel strongly about the fact that your team partner is at least like, you're there together. You should kind of take care of each other. I don't think it's your responsibility, but I think that probably you should care. And I think that it's important to just pay attention, and that can be about the things you talk about before. So talking about Gigi's ADHD meds, or talking about her eating enough. Those are all things that are things you can discuss before, but it also just means like sometimes you're at a tournament and it's really warm outside. I don't know, your team partner might or like, might need ice cream. You need to pay attention to these.
There's someone there that you had a fight with, and you want your partner to like help you out when leaving, when something I don't know, when you want to leave. And I guess that the same kind of thing applies kind of to talking to other teams at the competition, like after rounds. So I don't know, we've said a lot of things about how you can decide your own way of dealing with things, and these are just issues that you need to talk about with your partner. I think we're kind of different on this one, which is everyone at Euros is probably really nervous and stressed, or like the overwhelming majority of people attending are stressed and nervous. And there are lots of people that haven't been to Euros or Worlds before. There are lots of people that won't know you and you won't know them. And a big thing is like how you behave right after the debates. And it's really understandable that you might have feel all of the disappointment that we've talked about, or just want to talk to your partner about feedback in a very constructive way, like we've discussed. But that I don't think takes from your responsibility to be just a normal and genuine and nice human being. So have a conversation with the people that you were in the debate with. Ask them stuff that's not about debating. Maybe where they're from, what kind of degree they do. Not everyone apparently does law like they do here in Leiden. And that's an interesting fact that you can learn more about. And it's also something that will really...
Euros is going to be people going like, hi, what do you study?
What do you study? Do you study law? No, we both don't. But it's not only, I think it's a really good thing for you and your team, because you get to talk to people about something other than what you should have done differently in that speech. But it's also really important for people who haven't gone before and are just also there to make friends, because we all do this in our free time voluntarily. And it's I guess a way to make people enjoy the things that aren't winning the competition, being one of the two winning teams.
Yeah,
that was all around the debates, but there are things you need to do. I think this is slightly more technical during the debates, and I think these things are very, very different per team. But and this is, I think, even more of a checklist, things you really need to have dealt with before Euros, because those are things you can't. These are small things that are easy to fix and very I think a very, very big source of frustration. I used to speak with someone and sing, like, we're going to walk through them, but it's things like handwriting, who does the POIs, do you talk about the POIs together, who decides on the extension. I used to speak with someone whose handwriting I couldn't read, and I pretended to read it, and I couldn't read it. So that's like a big deal, and they found out and weren't happy about it. So I think, and those can be really frustrating and very easy to solve. So a few of them.
So we think that it's important to discuss how you communicate during the debate. So I'm the second speaker in our team, and Gigi sometimes has already spoken. I'm trying to write a extension, or not an extension, a whip speech or whatever. And Gigi will try to be really nice and say something that I need to rebut or a smart point. And I don't deal well with that. So I usually just yell, write it down, and I'll ignore it, which is not good. But I think that there are chances of me incorporating it in my speech are always a lot higher when she writes it down. But I think that those are things that you need to discuss. So she now knows that she usually just writes it down immediately, which means that I can both pay attention to the speech and read what she's writing down. Some teams communicate the entire time, like keep your voice down, but I feel like that's also fine. But you need to kind of pay attention to what people really, what's useful to people. So I think that
I can't listen and listen to Emma and listen to the speaker and write at the same time. I can't. No. So if she wants me to do anything, she'll write it down, and otherwise I won't do it. And she also knows that if she writes something down, we decided that I will give her a response. Either I'm not going to do that, or I already have that down, or okay, fine, I'll do it. Thanks. Yeah. Whatever. But we've decided beforehand what we will do in those situations, and I think we have similar like agreements when it comes to making the decisions on content in the team. So, I mean, there are the times when you prep and you have the absolutely most perfect case that you've ever seen in your life, and you'll be able to run it, and it's awesome. But I think a majority of the times, at least, we won't have that. We'll have just a few different ideas and things that we can choose from, regardless of what position we have in the debate. And we make all of the decisions that we have to make when we speak in first half during prep together. And if we speak in second half, we'll do a large part of it in prep. So we'll decide which extension we want to run most if we still can, and then rank them down. But it just happens sometimes that all of it is taken, or something changes, or you want to do something differently.
Or the debate is framed in a certain way, which makes one of the extensions more valuable.
Less relevant or more relevant. If it's just a ranking thing, and either one of us notices, we'll just talk to each other, write it down, and it'll change. But sometimes it's like more of a strong change, and we'll have to do more than that. We basically, I think in second half, I'll decide more often that we have to change something than Emma will, and she basically always trusts my decision. And I know that Emma will only object to a decision I make if she's certain that there's no way to make it work. And then I also just trust her, because I know that she'll only say, no, we're not doing that, when she's really certain that it doesn't work. So
I think we had a conversation with another team, and they were like, yeah, basically we just talk to each other, and then we hope that we find some form of agreement. And I think that's really cool, and I think that usually we agree as well, but I think there needs to be some sort of who decides on the extension. I always think that the logical thing to do is the extension speaker should decide on the extension. Other teams feel differently, and I think that's about who might be better in strategy, who might be better in, I don't know, extension, those things. But I think you need to discuss it, because otherwise you have two people. There's no way to break the tie if you disagree, and there needs to be a form of dealing with that. So I think that kind of deals with the question about disagreements during prep. I think you need to have someone who makes that final call, and I think usually that person should be like, I don't know, you should decide on that person, and that person should make those calls, like not switch per debate or do anything like that. And I think that sometimes means that person is going to make the wrong call, but I also think that kind of sometimes they'll make the right call, right? So yeah, I think
like we also have a follow-up. So like in the situations in which this happens and we have to change course, and I decide something and Emma's like oppositional towards the idea, she'll have me write down a few things, because she can't read my handwriting. It's great. We can read each other's handwriting. Look, this is Emma's handwriting. It's really pretty. And I'll write, she'll ask me to write down what in broad terms the extension is, and we've already talked about what kind of stuff she wants me to write down. So not every example and every mechanism, but just the broad idea of what I'll be running. And then she'll usually she'll say, okay, cool, I get it, and then keep working, but sometimes there'll be a small adjustment and we talk it through and write most of it down.
Yeah, so I think that all those things are only things you can get if you do some debate. So I know that, like, I don't need to know Gigi's extension. If she's just running something we've discussed during prep, then I'll recognize it and I'll be able to deal with it. If she says, I've got a new idea, I'm like, I'm very interested in that new idea.
You always say, no, this you always say, yeah, go for it. That sounds super weird. Run it. I'm like, okay.
Okay, but at least I'm interested in what that weird idea is, right? I think that kind of shows, like, in our team, a lot of the calls are made by Gigi, and that's something I'm fine with, but people need to be fine with it, right? So you need to discuss it. I've been in other teams where I made all the calls, so for me it was kind of an adjustment where I was like, oh, there's this other person who's making decisions. So I think that that's something that you both need to be fine with, and I think that is especially problematic if both of you want to make those calls.
That's definitely not going to resolve itself at Euros. That's something you need to
resolve right now.
And I mean, it could even be like, I don't know, if the debate's about the Democratic Republic of Congo and reproductive rights and HIV, that's Emma's dissertation. If it's about that, Emma will make the calls and I will back up and let her do it. And that's fine. We know that already, but there might be, you could decide that in debates about these kinds of issues, person X will decide, and these kinds of issues, person Y will decide. But that's something you need to do beforehand, because it will happen to you under stress circumstances that you might disagree, and then it's really, really frustrating if you haven't talked through it before. And to an extent, I think the same applies to POIs.
Yeah. So what I'm always really confused with is sometimes teams have POIs. Well, first of all, sometimes teams have different POIs, and then when they get up and they get the POI, they're still like, no,
a struggle.
There's a struggle.
I'm like, don't have the same POI.
Why do you not have the same POI? Obviously, one of the POIs is going to be better. You should probably ask the better POI, not the person who is at the time that you're asked taller. Like, that's just not something that happens. So I think that what we do is usually someone proposes a POI, the other one rewrites the POI to make it clearer to everyone, and we'll have the same POI. Or sometimes we'll have the same type of POI, but like
the same issue, yeah,
but differently worded, because we use different words, right? So you need to find a way with that. But I think that you need to share the POIs with your team partner. You need to share points or framing or something like that, and just write them down. You don't always have to discuss it. But I think
also, like, we even talk sometimes about who's gonna, when we've already decided about what the POI is that we
who's gonna ask it.
We talk about who's gonna ask it. So I mean, that sounds really unnecessary, weird. But it honestly, it helps. So the obvious cases are cases in which Emma will still have to speak, and I've already spoken. Obviously, I'm gonna do it because she needs to write down stuff. Or in cases where I'm like, oh, I can't get it done. I don't understand what the way is in which this works. Like, I'm not going to get it out right, then she'll do it. But we decide beforehand. Sometimes we will still both stand up. Yeah, that's fine. Ooh, so sometimes we decide because one of us is really excited about the POI, and the other's like, well, I don't know, does that matter? And then the excited one will get to do it because they will probably get it out better. But also, I mean, if one person's
you're excited about the POI, you should have the right to ask it. Like,
yeah, right. Make up a name. Okay. Oh, also we talk those through in prep sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes we ask, especially if we're closing half. I think we think about POIs. We want to ask our first half, because that's just also something that's nice to have, so that you don't have to think about it. Just can get up and ask them.
I think the next thing is something that's really close to our heart. Something I don't see us as a hateful team, but there are some things that can really rub us the wrong way, and one of them is. I mean, we talked a lot about how you're supposed to be supportive for your team partner when they sit down, tell them that they're doing well, and recognize that if they haven't done well, that it's probably the both of you. Be encouraging, nod during their speech, all great. I think it's totally unnecessary and kind of illogical to hear for your partner as though you want to surprise your judges with the fact that you agree with your team partner. That's just unnecessary. More importantly, it's really distracting for other people. And the same goes for shaming your opposition. Whoa, you disagree with your opposition. Amazing. What an insight. So I think the lesson from this for as a team is you can be encouraging for your partner,
but don't be disturbing to other people with your
and like there are things that I can do when Emma's speaking that she'll recognize that I'm doing, but others won't. Like a certain look, we just know that a certain look is like, oh, this is cool. Like when I'll smile during a speech, she knows that means that I'm really impressed, not that I think she's stupid. Or and the opposite is doing things like this. We all know that means that you're trying to get your team partner to hurry up because you think they're doing something stupid. All of the other people in the room now also think that what they're doing is stupid because even their partner doesn't.
Also pointing towards your team partner, literally people point towards your team partner. I'm like, yes, everyone's paying attention to your team partner. It's literally the job of the judges to pay attention to your team partner right now. Like if I'm not listening to your team partner, that's a problem for me. So, okay, I have strong feelings about this.
And I mean, that's
otherwise you're fine and really nice.
I guess it still means that you want the other person to be involved in your speech and stuff, but at the point where it becomes distracting to others, it will always be a bad idea to do, and just leave it.
Yeah. But I do think it's important to be very supportive towards your team partner. So I think it's important to kind of be like, oh, you were great when they sit down. I think it's important to nod. I think it's important not to blame someone for going out and out rounds. I think that just, I don't know, people sometimes try to make a competition between team partners or who's the better person in the team or something like that. And I think the only way to kind of combat those things is to be just really supportive and I don't know, nice to each other. I think the reason that I take feedback so much better from Gigi is because I always know it's from a place of friendship and niceness. And I think that that's something that kind of can only happen if you're really supportive to each other. But maybe that's just us. I think that sometimes you just don't want to hear that that was a good speech. I don't know, probably some people have those preferences, which is fine. But for us, it works really well to be supportive.
It does. I feel supported. Okay, aww. I think we're at the point where we walked through all of the things that we discussed, all the things that we did during competitions, and we have come to the last phase of your team partnership, which is debriefing after the competition. You've made it. You might be one of the 2 teams that won, probably not. And there are some things you need to settle. So like the first thing is, I thought about the things that I remember from Worlds and Euros from other years, and the things that I remember are, so that might also just be me because I think other people remember a lot of things that happened to them in debates, but I never do. The things that I remember or the things that I look back on are the things that you did together as a team, the really good speech that you give, but then more the embarrassing POI that comes right after. So I think one of the most fun times that we've ever had as a team was when we went out immediately in our first out round at Worlds, and then all of our friends were really nervous because they
like doing out rounds and stuff, and we were just
hanging out, and that was, I think, at least the social was like one of the most fun nights we've had at Worlds and Euros and stuff. And also, I think it's important to recognize the moments while they're happening. Like if something funny happens, that's something you need to enjoy and remember, and then let go of the stress just a little and just let it happen. And that also makes it easier to deal with not being one of the 2 teams that wins, or maybe not reaching all of the more personal and more like micro goals that you've talked about before. And I think this is also the point where you have to like evaluate those goals that you've set and whether you've reached them. One thing is like I've noticed that if you set goals, so even for smaller competition, I would set goals with team partners and they would just change them at the end. We'd talk about like wanting to give one speech that we're proud of or speaking over and something, and then after it was done and we get it, they were like, no, but then that's no, because I wanted to do 2 speeches that were good, or I wanted to speak over it, or a blah, or we went out in the out round, or something shitty, and that just makes all of this
stuff
that you knew was going to make you happy before all of it happened. It makes it
because your goals shift, right? So it's important that's why it's important to talk about them before, because now we're really happy when this happens, but when that happens, immediately your goals start shifting. So I think that you should probably also just like kind of think about the goals you set. And I think what we do sometimes, which I think works well for us, is just be like, if this happened 2 years ago, we would have been over the moon happy. And then kind of just thinking about the fact that you've become a better team or better speakers. And I think that it's important to remember your team partner, because also I think that it's way easier for me to see how awesome Gigi is doing, how well she's doing, which means that I need to sometimes remind her of that. So yeah, I think that it's important to kind of debrief after a tournament, and not just walk away, never talk to each other again.
Also, settle your bets.
Oh yes, very important.
My sushi after Euros, it will be amazing sushi. We have a sushi place that knows when we come, because they know obviously when Euros is. So right after,
we'll be there.
We'll be there. And I guess the thing is, like, you might encounter new things or new struggles or new conflicts during your prep or during Euros or right before or whatever moment. I think as long as you've decided to be honest about it, and you can trust the other in being honest about it, you'll probably find your own way to deal with it as well. Yeah. Or you can message Emma or me, and then we might be able to mediate. No, I mean, if you have any questions about any of this, you can obviously ask us at a different point. And don't be afraid to deviate from what we decided, because some of our stuff might be totally irrelevant to you, and you might have better decisions of your own to make. Probably.
So much freedom. So much freedom. So much things to discuss.
I guess that's it, right?
I think so.
I hope that was useful. I hope we see all of you
somewhere
constructive,
Scottish Euros.
Constructive. Yeah, Scottish Euros, definitely. Maybe even this Euros. That's going to be really exciting. And we'll see you give each other constructive feedback and appreciate it.
And have fun.
And have fun. And we're looking forward to
hearing your bets
and compare your music list to ours.
Oh,
ours
yeah,
is definitely better.
So much better.
Already so much better. And I guess that was it. All right. Bye.